There were animal pens, like in a barn, made of plastic fencing and PVC pipes, and fish tanks acting as incubators. On the third floor, the Irwins had put in a sliding glass door and built an upper deck. They would let some of the dogs out there. They'd installed waist-high fencing around the platform and blocked the dogs from public view by tying bed sheets to standing planks of wood. The whole contraption was painted in solid red barn paint. Tracy offered to put up the women for the night, but they declined. We gave them the dogs and we went to our hotel. And my daughter said, "Mom, I will never, ever let you go to that place alone," Beverly later recalled. In email discussions leading up to their visit, Beverly had told Tracy she was a retired nurse. She also came from a strong Christian background. Her grandfather was a pastor and one of the founding fathers of the Assemblies of God, a group of Pentecostal churches known for fire and brimstone preachers and belief in faith healing and speaking in tongues. Beverly found Tracy interesting because she was extremely intelligent. She was a penny stock trader. She was handy around the house and had even built their air purifier. Tracy had worked a few years as a nurse's aide and was trained in CPR. Tracy had previously confided in Beverly that her husband was ill. When Beverly visited the church the day after dropping off the dogs, Tracy brought out Jerry. Beverly talked to them about church politics and legalities. "They were very worried about that," she said later. "They wanted to see the kingdom passed from Jerry to Tiffany smoothly, and I gave them a little bit of advice on how to do that. It was more moral advice." Jerry couldn't speak, but he could understand and nod his head. He had little control of his bodily functions. On his foot was a decubitus ulcer, commonly called a bed sore, that had eaten through several layers of skin and tissue. Tracy had been debriding it, having taught herself medical procedures by reading books and internet sites. She'd also been ordering medications from Europe. Beverly was impressed that Tracy had been correctly using the medications and doing the procedures without formal training, but she cautioned her against it. Tracy told her that they couldn't get physician coverage and didn't believe in taking Jerry to a doctor. They believed in faith healing. Well known in the Mishawaka medical community, Beverly convinced Tracy she could connect her to a doctor who would at least steer her in the right direction and order the medications. Beverly stayed in town again that night and took up Tracy's offer to speak at Sunday's service. And that church, wow. Beverly later reflected, a slight Southern twang giving flavor to the shock in her words. Was that interesting? It was odd. It was odd in that the people seemed pretty normal, and they seemed sad, and they seemed, bound. They were suppressed. Beverly told the congregation the biblical story of Ritzpah, whose 2 sons had been murdered to atone for the sins of their father. The story illustrates the undying spirit of a mother's love, Ritzpah having protected her sons' bodies from prey until they could be properly buried. And when I stood in that pulpit and I gave that message, people sat in their seats and they wept. And one woman in particular, well, several of them, they just cried and cried and cried and cried. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. Beverly wouldn't know until 2015, after news reports of the church broke internationally. And I realized it was the first simple gospel message they'd heard in years. At the end, she gave an altar call, an opportunity for people to come forward for personal prayer or to give their lives to Jesus. During a typical service back home, Beverly would see a handful of worshipers at the altar. But when she gave the call at WLCC, every single person in the church went forward. Beverly started at one end of the altar and went down the line, praying for each individual. The women were weeping. I just knew that they were wanting something from me, and I didn't know what to give.